Okay, good morning. This is Kathy Sipple, and welcome to week 1 of social media for people who care about the environment. Whether you consider yourself an environmentalist or just a, eco-conscious person, I think, this will be the focus today, as we're going to be using some of the same tools that I use in other workshops, but through the filter of people who, care about the environment. So those will be the examples we use. That's kind of the language we'll be using, the intention, and anyway, hopefully that's pretty clear. If you've got anything that you'd like to cover specifically, I'd like to kind of introduce each of you. If you'd like, I could open the mic for you. I know, unfortunately, Roseanne, we had a little bit of trouble when I tried to get you on the mic last time. Let me know in the question area if you would like to have the mic and just say a little bit about you and what you hope to get out of this week. If you're willing to do that or you feel comfortable doing that, certainly I've got some leeway here to create this to be what you need, and to what extent I can do that, we'd be happy to do. Charlotte, let me give it a try. It looks like you do have a mic on your computer. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and we'll give it a shot. Charlotte? Can you hear me? Yeah, hi. Would you like to introduce yourself and maybe say a little bit about your work, what you'd like to get out of our time?
Sure. I'm Charlotte. I live over in Lakeville. I run educational trying to teach children and adults sustainability. And I'd really like to be brought up to speed on how to have a conversation with folks who are and the claim to be conservatives are very concerned about inequities in income level. They're concerned about inequalities such as environmental problems. They support the capitalist system, but very concerned about these side effects and quite bring themselves to condemn the entire system. And so that's the discussion I'd like to have those individuals to bring them on working on environment.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can recap that. I got to say, you're fading in and out just a little bit on the mic. It might be just the strength of your internet signal. Is that a possibility?
Possibility.
Okay, let me see if I can repeat that and summarize. I think what you said was reaching out to people that are a little bit more conservative-minded and finding some common language to speak with them around income inequality. And did I miss another key point? I'm sorry.
Yes, the income inequality, the environmental of activities or activity within the capital system, and how we open a conversation, addresses those, and still is within the level as being very supportive of the capitalist system. They don't want to hear we're going that.
Okay. All right. So I got to say, I majored in economics, so that will be kind of interesting to try to tie that in. I'm not sure I'm the top qualified person, but hey, guess what? Lisa Harris is willing to say something, and you never know. Maybe she's got something that we could add on to that. But thank you. So involving conversations that are more inclusionary, understanding that they're coming from a place where, don't want to give up the capitalist system. How do we introduce environment and environmental talks to those people? Good stuff. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lisa. Hey, Lisa. Welcome back.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi there. Good to hear your voice.
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Yes, I do have a voice.
Yes, it's good. Very good to hear it. So tell us a little bit about, where you're from, what, where we can kind of find out more about you online, and what you'd like to get out of this week.
I grew up in Indiana, South Bend, Indiana, and I've lived kind of on the East Coast for the last, since the 80s, and just returned. and my background includes degrees in fisheries and wildlife, environmental science, public affairs, and culinary arts, and dabbling in some wildcrafting for medicines and foods. And I'm really interested in using my writing skills to kind of tie a lot of those things together and get information out about the Great Lakes region now that I'm back here and the environmental issues that are here, and looking for ways to use social media to get information out about the status of the water quality and the air quality and the energy use and those kinds of things, and see if there are ways that I could actually make money doing it in addition to getting it out. And I'm working on a website/blog and just trying to figure out ways to configure it so that I can, in a simple way, because I'm not into a major website
Development.
kind of setup, but just enough to get the word out and be able to communicate these things and say, hey, I'm out there for hire.
Great. And your blog, is your blog still The Savory Muse? I'm just trying to find you here real quickly.
That blog is out there, and I've actually been working on another one that's more of a business-oriented blog.
Do you want to say what that is so people can find you and follow?
I'll type it into the
chat box?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chat box.
That sounds great. And Nancy is not sure she's got a mic. We can give that a try. She did ask that I share the Facebook page for Prairie Wind, which I have done. So you can access that anytime during, the talk, and I'm going to do my best to include notes with the recording. And I do want to thank all of you who made financial contributions. I think everybody on this call did. But the gap that still existed between what I said I could do for kind of doing it free or doing the video, Nancy gave me the A-OK to use our green drinks, oh boy, green drinks kitty, excuse me, they are not drunks, to close that gap and do the recording. So I want to thank her for that. Nancy, let me see if I can get you off the mic. Are you able to talk, Nancy?
If you can hear me, then I have a mic.
You have a mic. You're welcome.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry I said green drunks. That was a total slip.
Well, sometimes who knows?
Sometimes who knows, yes. Okay. So tell us a little bit about what you'd like to do. I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions. I know you've been really committed to green drinks in Michigan City over the past 2+ years. So I'm sure that's part of it, but what all would you like to get out of this time together?
I think it's threefold, actually. One would be green drinks for sure. I know that we've been taking baby steps at this point, and I really would like to learn techniques as far as being able to do the cross-referencing between green drinks and the organizations we have and individuals we have speaking. I've just very recently started getting into hashtags, and I think those can be used much more powerfully than I've been using them up until this point in time. I'm also on the board of directors for Save the Dunes, and I'm in a very close partnership there with Kathy Morton, who is a full-time staff person. And we sort of tag team trying to keep the web page and the Facebook page relevant and engaging for Save the Dunes. And then last of all, I'm very interested in making a difference legislatively, especially at the State House in Indiana. Thus, this month, Hoosier Environmental Council is going to be the speaker at both the Green Drinks in Valparaiso and Michigan City. And I know people need to get in contact with the environmental movement on a very personal level. But what I also realize is big picture-wise, unless we start really letting our elected officials know how we feel about issues, nothing is ever going to change.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Very, very good input. Much appreciated. And let's see, Kobe, can I unmute you? Would you like to say a little something? Or Tacey? Let me see here, Tacey, if I can do that for you. Tacey, would you like to say a few words?
Hi. Can you hear me? I'm
Yep.
on the telephone.
You
Okay,
sound great.
wonderful.
You sound great.
Good. I had difficulty the last time we tried this before I graduated, and so I'm glad this is working.
Yeah.
So this is my goal. I need to learn a little bit more about social media, and I'm very much involved in the environment, formerly in Northwest Indiana. This is a way for me to connect with my friends who are back there. I see, Nancy. It's good that she's involved, and other friends from the Green Drinks, and I want to be supportive of that. So even though this is very early in the morning for me, I'm hoping to learn from everybody else. But I didn't get up at 4:30 in the morning like you. So.
Yeah, that was Nancy. I guess had to drive to where she was going to be be able to be in her position to do the computer. So that's quite the commitment. Is there anything in particular, Tacey, that you would like to focus on about social media?
Well, no, I'm excited to be able to exchange different ideas, and I'm not very savvy. Hence, I remarked about the time that I had a total failure when trying to participate in a really important GoToMeeting that you had arranged to be speaking about the importance of native wildlife and so forth. But my interests are more broad. I am very interested in making sure that people get a good understanding of the importance of interacting with the environment in a positive manner for their own spirituality and health and well-being, and that others can have that possibility as well. But I am just not as savvy with all the electronic possibilities. So I'm fortunate that I'm able to sit in my apartment in Springfield, Illinois in my pajamas and participate. But I really understand what Nancy had to go through, because when I had that epic fail a while back with one of your other networking challenges, I was at my university and I totally could not get the system to work. So I'm very fortunate that I didn't even have to comb my hair this morning.
Well, thanks for getting back up on the horse. So one question I have for you: are you still the newsletter editor for InPause?
No, I'm not.
You're not.
But I had a fabulous experience with that, and I was listening when someone else was talking about wanting to increase their own ability to have a conversation with people around her. I was thinking, oh my gosh, she should start her own newsletter, because with the things we're going to learn in this workshop, I'm sure there's ways that she could also then electronically put that out to a number of people.
Yep.
But I had a fabulous experience with that, and would love to do that again under the right circumstances.
Great.
Unfortunately, I didn't make money with that, but but the networking is so unbelievable that things come up out of the woodwork once you start moving electronically and networking. So that's what I would recommend for that lady. I think you said her name was Lisa.
Yes, and just so I'm not dropping acronyms in case somebody doesn't know what InPause is, it's Indiana Native Plants and Wildflower Society. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
Yep. Really, really nice work that you did there. Okay, well, let's see what else we've got. Thank you for sharing. Kobe, can you, are you able to speak? Okay, I know you said you didn't think you had a mic, but I thought I'd just give that a try. If you'd like to type in anything that you'd like for me to share, Kobe, I'd be happy to do so. But I'll introduce Kobe. She is in Valparaiso, where I am, and she has recently stepped up to volunteer with organizing Valparaiso Green Drinks. So very much appreciate her stepping up to do that. And she has a marketing background herself, so I'm sure she'll be able to contribute quite a lot with this week. And let's see, poor Roseanne, I don't know that we can get her her speaker to work, unfortunately. So she just says, your dollars speak, be conscious of where your food comes from, locally grown is best, also contact with political figures who are open to preserving our local environment. Pete Vyshkovsky, I always have trouble with his name for some reason, seemed very concerned about this at the Portage Town Hall meeting. Great. Yeah, I've met him a couple times, and I have felt that he seemed, pretty on board. So Lisa shared her work in progress. She's got her blog. We'll pop that up on the screen here in a little bit. And I love where this is going already because you're starting to network among yourselves. Charlotte said regarding Nancy's comments about legislators, maybe we should learn how to set up an online petition specifically tied to Indiana state legislation. I've signed many national petitions which invariably subscribe me to many lists, some of which I don't want to be subscribed to. Okay, so I really love where you're going with this, and actually I already opened a few tabs on my screen, and one of them is change.org. So I don't know how many of you have done a petition before, but let's just start with this because it really is pretty easy to do, you know, the guts of it, and compared to what, you know, can be done by passing around a little, you know, a piece of legal paper or something. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here, but I think that Nancy Moldenauer was at the Valparaiso Green Drinks when it was suggested that we do that very thing, just pass around a legal pad and sign a, you know, piece of paper and give it to Mayor Costas, our mayor here in Valparaiso, to save the trees at the Valpo Tech building, which is where we were holding green drinks. And, you know, the social media marketer in me, the digital person in me, just couldn't sit there and sign the yellow pad piece of paper. I'm like, we have 30 people maybe in this room, and, you know, when we sign this paper, the only people that will know about it are us and the mayor. But if we would all just do the exact same thing online, post it to Facebook and share with our friends, then, you know, it has legs. It can go somewhere. So it's just really, you know, much more powerful and not all that difficult. I don't necessarily want to start a petition just to start a petition, but I can, you know, kind of go through the steps that I did to get here, and it really was not all that difficult at all. I think the main thing is just knowing where to go to make it happen, and change.org is the primary one that I know for starting petitions. If you know of a better one, you know, please share that, and be happy to look at that tool as well. But basically, I mean, the steps are, you go to change.org, you click start a petition, and you do need to name who you want to petition. You can't just, you know, say, hey, I think it should be this way. Who are you trying to influence? What decision maker? So since ours was a city level decision, we did make the person that we wanted to petition our mayor. What do we want them to do? You know, put in the call to action, and then why is this important? So obviously the more heart you can put into it, the more facts you can put into it, the better. And then if you've got a video that you can link to, or a photo, but I think a video is a little bit stronger. A word about videos, by the way. Some people get a little fearful. They think that their video has to be, you know, professionally produced. You know, you've got to hire a videographer. Frankly, if you just have a smartphone and it's something that you can put together in, you know, less than 15 minutes, you're probably doing it right. It's a little off-putting sometimes when you are trying to raise money, particularly not necessarily for petition, but if it looks like you're you know, so well funded that you can go out and hire a professional videographer, it almost can work against you when you're trying to look really grassroots. So don't be afraid to have it just be, you know, down and dirty. If I would have, you know, taken it one step further, I think I probably would have gone out there and taken my smartphone and video, you know, taped the trees and had narration about, you know, what was going on. As it was, I wasn't really the key person that was behind this. The building owner, Walt Breitinger, kind of was the one who wanted to get it started, and he just had no idea how to do the online petition, so I ended up being the name attached to it. But anyhow, you know, I think even with that, instead of having 30 people, we ended up having 316 people, so, you know, 10 times what was present in that room. And I basically took the comments from the people, you know, in that room, assembled them, put in a picture, and quite frankly, this is just a royalty-free image. It wasn't a picture even of that tree, but at least it communicated some idea about what, you know, what was important with the story. So this could have been better, but even as it was, we got 10 times the result that we would have gotten if we just stopped with who was in the room. So we did, here's a link to the site plan. We hyperlinked a few things, and I'm going to go ahead and just go through a few basics too. For some of you, I know hyperlinking might be really, really basic, but if you don't know, you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And hyperlinking just means that the text shows up as a link, usually it changes a different color when you hover over it and typically is underlined, although that doesn't have to be. But the thing that happens with hyperlink text is it represents a link on another page that you can tie your information to. So instead of having to describe every single thing about this other document within the body of my my petition, I could simply include hyperlinks. So I'm going to quickly show you how to do that. But hyperlinking is it's a big tool that is pretty important whether you're talking about an email, an online email, you're talking about updating your blog and wanting to reference, reference outside sources. You can't exactly do a straight-up hyperlink in Facebook. However, you can do tagging. So Nancy kind of mentioned how to cross-post or how to, cross-engage with speakers on green drinks. So that concept is real important. It's just, how do you get your message connected to the bigger online community? Okay, and I think that's the kind of the mindset shift that we need to get past, is feeling that it's not like typing a letter. It's not like signing your name to a legal pad. Once you've done that body of work, you want to make sure that that information that you've created is tied in, as many places as you can to make it relevant and make it accessible. So let me just see. I think we've got a few questions here. Charlotte asked, how did you figure out where to send the petition, email addresses, Facebook pages? Great question, and I'm going to cover that for sure. We'll talk about that. So that's a wonderful question. You don't just do it and then stop. Does anybody happen to have a petition that well, that might be a little too ambitious, but if you've got one that you'd like to do during the course of this week, then we could all help get that launched. I just don't have anything right this minute that I need to make a petition about. Okay, but basically steps are, again, going to change.org, click Start a Petition, fill in the information that I already mentioned before, and I'm just going to say this is an example of a hyperlink. Okay, so hyperlink, again, is just text that you're going to link somewhere else. Since I'm not really starting a petition, I'm just going to kind of pick something that's a little bit random. I'm going to pick Lisa's blog for now, just to give a shout out. Okay, what I would do is click the word that I want to hyperlink. I'll just say hyperlink to Lisa's blog. Okay, so I could highlight whatever words I want, but typically you want to do the words that most represent the topic that you are representing with this other link. Then you click the little thing that looks like a chain link, and this is pretty much true wherever you do this, whether it's WordPress or MailChimp. Hyperlinks are going to look pretty much the same on any platform. It kind of looks like a chain link fence a little bit. Okay, so she's got Savory Muse. It is really savorymuse.com, or is it really savorymuse.wordpress.com? Well, since we're not going to make this a real post, I'm not going to worry too much. And then if you title it and give it some kind of contextual meaning instead of just leaving this blank, that actually helps Google a little bit to find this post and have it make sense. Okay, so you're helping your search engine optimization when you go ahead and title it. All right, so if I say OK, now what happens is when I hover over it, that little tag pops up, the title, the Savory Muse blog. Okay, so if I were to actually click on that, it would take me to Lisa's blog once I had this thing published. So hopefully that makes sense. So you're going to kind of learn little technical tidbits as we learn, really I think what we've been talking about are strategic and social and emotional strategies as well. Okay, so when we talk about reaching out to others that might have a different mindset, to me that falls in the category of social and emotional intelligence. There's a little bit of tribe building. You can make a bigger impact when you already have gathered up friends and supporters. So Charlotte's question was, after this thing was live, how did I know who to share it with? Well, change.org makes it pretty easy to do that. The last step after you preview and publish is share. So you can actually share right to Facebook, Twitter, and email right from here, okay? So if you are already active on those sites, certainly that makes it a whole lot easier to tap into your existing tribe. If you don't yet have a tribe, you can do some tricks like Nancy mentioned, things with hashtags, for instance. So let's just say I was a brand new Twitter account, and let's see, Charlotte is talking about CAFO in state legislature. So, let's just pretend like this petition was about that. So after I shared to, I definitely share with everybody on this call, most likely. I feel like, you'd be prime supporters. I have, 900 and I think it's almost 1,000 people on our green drinks list that when used judiciously, I feel that, I can share with that group. You do really need to honor the original intention for which the list was developed. I'll say a little bit about that later, but we had a question about that just within the past week. Somebody wanted that list, and I said, no, it's people opt into your list, so you can't just simply download that list and give it to anybody that asks for it. You've got to kind of protect your tribe. Charlotte mentioned, being involved in a few petitions and you end up on lists that you don't want to be, on, you need to really be wary of that. You need to be concerned about that and make your tribe's experience a good one that really, preserves your integrity with them, okay? But sharing on social media is definitely a pretty easy way to do it because you don't need to ask permission, basically. People that show up there are kind of signing up for what I call an ambient awareness experience. I didn't make that up by any means, but it's not as interruptive as a phone call or an email. Basically, if I'm on Twitter, and let's say that, gosh, this was nice, Earth Matter retweeted my workshop about this, this workshop that we're in. I don't know why my head is huge. That's a little disturbing. But let's just say I wanted to find out what are the hashtags around CAFOs. And gosh, all right, I know I should know this. Contained Animal Farming Operation. Is that the right? I know what it is, but I don't know sometimes what it actually stands for. So tell me if that's not right. You could look up on a tag or on a post like what I just found here, which is, Ultimate Green Twitter Hashtag List, Build Your Online Green Twitter Following. I'm going to go ahead and just send that to all of you. There are many, many confined animal feeding operation. Okay, I knew something like that. I had it a little bit wrong. Okay, so this has, 150, and it's just somebody's idea of what they think are the best ones. I don't see CAFO here. I bet you CAFO is one. It's just, environment obviously covers a lot of different areas. So when I just did hashtags for environmentalists, you can see I got, a whole page full. Green tweets, 75 plus environmentalists to follow on Twitter, 10 hashtags most used. So you can search any of those kind of things, or you can just simply go into Twitter. And hashtags, honestly, are kind of working across nearly every platform these days. Instagram, Facebook, Google+, but Twitter is where they originated. So, I kind of like to start on Twitter first and just see what I find there. So when I do a search for CAFO, I just went straight to the hashtag, I'm seeing that it's used pretty frequently. It was used as recently as, February 7th, February 6th. so it's not a one-off thing. People are using that, okay? So here's CAFO, Iowa, CAFO, Brazil, China. So let's just say we were starting a petition about CAFOs in Indiana. What I would probably do then would be just instead of adding CAFO, just CAFO, I might also put Indiana, okay, in my tweet. So I do a whole 1 hour thing on hashtags. What the heck is a hashtag and why should you care? But I'll try to distill the essence down for you of why hashtags can be important. And we'll be coming back to that, throughout the week. So if you don't quite get it right now, don't worry. We're going to, come back to it. But hashtags basically tell people that this is what my tweet is really about. This is kind of the I think all of us have been to libraries. I mean, we're all old enough where we actually read books that smelled like paper and, walked into a place and checked out books. But basically, that Dewey Decimal System where a book's got to be filed somewhere. It's got to be filed under, a topic. And so, the hashtag basically is kind of a topic that this tweet is filed under. It's the bigger thing. It's the bigger message. It's the biggest word in your tweet. You can have, multiple tweets. Technically, you could make every single word in your tweet a hashtag, but typically that can get a little bit, that can be a little much. So usually 3 or 4 is about the max that you can reasonably fit into a tweet and still leave enough room within the 140 characters where you've got time to build some context, okay? So we've got one, I see my friend Dan Sockwriter wrote, environmental injustice coming to a rural area near you via @IndyStar, and then here we go, Indiana, CAFO, factory farms, go vegan, and then a link to the post. So he's done a lot of things right with this. He's credited the original poster. That's what he means by via @IndyStar. So IndyStar might be alerted that somebody else, helped boost their signal and might, give them props or retweet something that they did, whatever. Indiana, I've already explained that that's, regional hashtag. CAFO is a topical hashtag. Factory farms is kind of another, synonym, let's say, for CAFO. And then go vegan obviously takes it in a little different direction, but related. If we're all vegan, then we don't really need factory farms to begin with. And then this link is hyperlinked text once again, so it takes you to presumably the full article or the original article that talks about that. Okay, so this is kind of a, this might seem like I'm spending a lot of time on dissecting a tiny little thing here on Twitter, but Twitter can be huge. Twitter is a great discovery vehicle that helps you find information, and it can also really help you get found. To be found, though, you need to be kind of speaking Twitter. You need to be speaking in a way that lets people know who you are and what you're about. So in last week's class, we were talking about, how to kind of promote yourself or your project on Twitter. And some of you that were on that, this is going to be somewhat of a review. But, there are your tweets, and then there's you, right? And both of these things kind of work together because as you gain, social credibility, people kind of want to know what you're about. And so the first thing they're going to do when they find out that you, retweeted their stuff or you're tweeting about something they think is interesting is they're probably going to look at your bio and decide, do I want to follow this person? You get 160 characters to flesh out your Twitter bio. And so I just try to have a little bit of fun with it. I try to, mention a few different things that I do. And frankly, I mix this up from time to time. I mean, I like playing poker, so sometimes I put Texas Hold'em player, and then I start getting, poker players following me. I brew my own beer, or I used to. Sometimes when I put that, then I'll start getting brewers, So I kind of mix it up. I have a lot of different interests, so, I'm gardening a lot in the summer, so I'm kind of talking about that more. Use that space to really attract the people that you want to, and you got to be as interesting as possible in that tiny little space. So Twitter is really about brevity and, again, knowing the language. So this is really kind of a perfect tweet, though, for 4 hashtags normally I would say is a little bit almost too much, but Dan has done a good job of just, getting it all in. So in fact, you know what, that's so good, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy it. I'm not saying, you got to do anything with it, but it's a really well-composed message. So I'll just copy that and share it in the question area. Let's see if I can open it. Alrighty. For some reason. Okay, there we go. Paste and share. So hopefully you guys are getting the things that I'm putting in the chat area. Alright. Yeah, I mean, that's just a really, really tightly written message. So what that would do, let me just say, beyond what's written here, what that would do, or what I would expect that to do, is anybody who is just following what's going on in Indiana, so that would be somebody that cares about things from a state house level, or just, anything about Indiana, that could pop up for them. Maybe they don't even care about, CAFOs, or they don't know about CAFOs, but they're vegan, So if I'm a vegan and I'm in Indiana, then I find out real quick what is a factory farm. That's disgusting. I'm going to click on this. Or if I care about CAFOs, but I'm in Illinois, we share a water source, let's say, then, maybe I still care, and I'm going to share it with my list. So, again, a lot of good things that he's doing here. Let me know if you have questions about hashtags, because I feel like, again, we could probably go on and on and on just about hashtags, and I don't want to get too lost in the weeds. But the very first thing that I would do after creating that petition would be to, recruit supporters from Facebook, Twitter, and email. So I would definitely tweet it. I would tweet it. I probably wouldn't use the standard text that they would, generate. It probably would be just not using hashtags, for instance. It would just be a link, here's a new petition I just started on change.org, and then ... It would probably be truncated, not in a really impactful way. So I'd probably, make it something hard-hitting like save the trees, hashtag Valpo, because they were in Valpo. Let's see, hashtag NW Indiana, since we've got a lot of people on the call that are from Northwest Indiana. That's one that we use here regionally. Hashtag Michiana, for those of you in South Bend, and even Michigan City sometimes gets picked up with hashtag Michiana. You need to kind of learn what your own geographic hashtags are. But when you've got anything of geographical import, then I would definitely slap on a related hashtag. So hopefully I'm not losing you guys. I know it's a lot of technical. Then I would take that same link, once you've got your petition. Okay, mine is closed at this point, so I can't really necessarily still get people to sign it. But every existing petition generates its own unique URL. So like hyperlinked text, URL is another pretty big deal. So we need to learn these building blocks of conversation to be able to go forth and do other things that we'll be doing in the week. What I mean by URL is just Universal Resource Locator, and that stands for, basically web page. It means that this thing exists online somewhere. It has its own unique little address. So I can take that guy, I can copy it, and if I were to put that into a tweet, though, that would take a lot of characters, right? That would be a pretty long tweet. I could tweet it right from here by clicking Twitter, and you can see this is just, it's kind of a mess. It's really very long. So Mayor John Costa, save the trees at Valpo Tech Building. What I would do to clean this up would be to shorten that link. So here's another tool, bit.ly is one great tool. I'm going to go ahead and put that in your chat box too. There are other ones out there. Tiny.url is another. I think they're coming out all the time, but I just kind of use bit.ly. You can paste your link to shorten it, and then you just simply click shorten. If you want to get fancy, you can actually sign in, make an account, and that allows you to do some other fancier things, like you can customize what your link says you could make it, this chn.ge/save the trees, for instance. If that name has not been taken, you can customize that, make it easier to remember. And you can also, if you sign in for a free account, you can get click-through statistics on your link, so you know how many times it's been shared, which can also be useful. But right now, I'm just going to take the kind of messy link, and I'm going to replace this very long link. You can see how long that is, and just put that guy in there. And via change.org, maybe they would retweet my thing. I don't know. No, maybe I should leave that. Let's see. I don't know if that's a policy of theirs to kind of retweet stuff that people create through them. Maybe. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and leave their Twitter handle on. This is a Twitter handle. Anything that comes after an @ symbol, okay? And again, I know I'm throwing a lot at you if you haven't even been on Twitter. So I'm going to add a hashtag. You can, here's one good space-saving tip. You can make an already existing word in your tweet a hashtag. You don't have to say Valpo and then separately make Valpo a hashtag, okay? So I also mentioned hashtag NW Indiana. Let me go ahead and do that. And this, I still got 38 characters left, so I'm going to just put out a little plea and say please RT. So that means please retweet. I'm kind of asking my, my friends, anybody that's in my tribe, to kind of help me out with this, and then I would hit tweet. I'm not going to do that since it's, a closed petition. It would probably be confusing for people, but that's how I would clean up this tweet to make it more impactful. I would then send it, to my my MailChimp. For those of you that don't have an email list to build your, tribe, I really like. I like many programs, frankly, but MailChimp is free for up to 2,000 names, and I believe 12,000 emails a month. So that's pretty darn good. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Even after you exceed those limits, it's still very darned affordable. If only I could remember my password. There we go. Okay. One other outcome, too, I know that Kobe, who was on the call, she is doing some press releases for Green Drinks. Doing press releases are great. You can still do a press release and go old school to alert media. In my case, a member of the media actually, he called me, and let me just see if I could find that. Phil Weiland, I believe, was his name. Save the trees. I think he called me like the very next day, after I had that petition online, and again, it wasn't even really my gig. It was Walt's gig, and I just kind of stepped in to get the job done. And this is frankly one of the main reasons I want to do this workshop. Is like, I cannot be the only person in Northwest Indiana. I know I'm not the only person in Northwest Indiana that knows how to do this, but it was kind of unfortunate that a pretty basic thing, like in a room full of 30 people, nobody really knew how to do this. And I thought, well, that's sad. It's really sad. Okay, the Times evidently has started to make you answer questions, to see the guts of their news, and I don't necessarily need to do that right now. But this was the link. That's how I could find this link. Was that my name was mentioned. So anyway, I did grab some press. It wasn't all that difficult to go from, taking it to an idea, let's do a petition, to online petition with, over 300 names, and, got in the news. I wish I could say it was a huge success. No trees came down at all. Unfortunately, trees did come down. There were some that, one of their arborists said, we're diseased, or we're non-native species, or all different kinds of things. And, we didn't quite win the whole battle, but I do think that they probably took more care, or answered us respectfully, let's put it that way, and made sure that we were engaged throughout the process. So, at least, whoa, sorry about that. I think I just got a video starting. Let me get rid of this page. Okay. So in any case, I feel like it put them on alert to let them know that we were serious, and they would have to kind of, deal deal with us. Let me just go to your questions here. It looks like there are a few. Okay, let's see. Questions. Here we are. Open up that box. I know you guys can't see me opening the box, but I need to actually grab it and make it big on my screen. Okay, so let's see what else we've talked about here. Charlotte says legislation is proposed to protect CAFOs from any citizen action or community action. Okay, and then Charlotte says my tribe, Facebook, doesn't seem to want to be involved in environmental issues, but I have liked many Facebook pages that are, such as Greening the Bend, Green Drinks. Can I message all with one click? A list of Facebook pages? Okay, good question. I'm going to show you. No, you can't really message all of them with. Yes and no. Let me take that back. I'm going to show you how you can do that. I think the easiest to get the message to everybody. And then how do you use hashtags in Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest? Can you use in Google+, and do they work on LinkedIn? You know, I do not see a whole lot of hashtags on LinkedIn, honestly. LinkedIn, I'm just going to double check that real quick. LinkedIn hashtags. I'm curious now. I want to know. Okay, you really need to stop using so many hashtags. So it kind of sounds like they're not crazy about hashtags. Using hashtags on LinkedIn. Now you can use hashtags on LinkedIn. LinkedIn withdraws hashtags. Okay, so it looks like they had them and then they took them away. It just doesn't seem like a real LinkedIn kind of thing. There's not the constant news flow like there is on Twitter. And, okay, so it says, whilst, somebody in England must have written this, I love that word, whilst still hyperlinked, clicking on a hashtag in the newsfeed takes you to a help page explaining the withdrawal of linked signal. Okay, so yeah, I thought that I hadn't seen them for quite a while, and that may or may not be the most up-to-date. They might be back. Lisa says hashtag free zone. I think LinkedIn is probably the one exception. But other than that, on Pinterest, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Google+, they pretty much work the same way that they do on Twitter. They're just used sometimes a little less consistently. I would say on Instagram, they tend to describe subject matter since that's a photo sharing platform. Typically it's either kind of an inside joke. I see some really long hashtags that I don't think anybody really expects to be discovered for. Or, there's some like labs of Instagram. I have a Labrador Retriever, and I see labs of Instagram like all the time, with just proud lab owners. So how environmental tags would be used, it would require a little further research, and frankly, research that I haven't exactly done just yet. But I would say, immersing yourself in the experience first and just doing some searches to find out what's commonplace in each of those areas is the best. And it's frankly different, for every single client that I work on, every single campaign that I work on. It takes a little bit of upfront research. There is one tool that you can go to that kind of had as their aim to be the organizer for the world's hashtags, and that is hashtags.org. So, I'm not going to say they do an absolutely perfect job of that. I'm going to send that in the chat area for all of you. If you want to take the time to register a hashtag as well, typically I would say that's not for the faint of heart, but if you have a bill, that's got a really specific name and you're trying to build awareness around, a really specific piece of legislation, and that's got a short name like HB 102 or whatever, then that might make sense to register a hashtag and use it for that very hyper aware time that you're trying to build awareness about that particular piece of legislation. I wouldn't use that hashtag on its own. If it was, piece of legislation that was about a confined animal feeding operation, that I would also use, CAFO hashtag, possibly also factory farm. again, I feel like I'm getting deep in the weeds about hashtags, but they are really important. I mean, they really, really are. There are multiple reasons why you would use a hashtag. We talked about some already. Geographic, is part of it. If it's just got a local relevance, using that. Using a thematic one like CAFO or Factory Farms or, Go Vegan, if that's one that's already in use. Those are hashtags that you want to hop on because they're already being used, and there's basically, it's like if a tree falls in the forest, okay, and nobody's there to hear it. It's like if you put out a tweet and you don't have any Twitter followers, who is going to hear it? Well, the good news is if anybody is tuned in to those hashtags, you still have an excellent chance of somebody hearing your tweet or receiving your tweet, even if they're not yet your Twitter follower. Okay, so that's the main reason why you'd want to use an existing hashtag. You can research those on hashtags.org, or you can just go straight to Twitter and do your research there. When you make your own hashtag, you claim your hashtag, it works a little better if you've already got a tribe that has agreed to use it as well. Okay, if you just start using a hashtag and nobody knows what you're doing, you're not going to probably likely have a lot of success with that. Okay, but let's say that you're an organizer for a big event, March Against Monsanto, or last year I did a TEDx event for changing the way we eat, so there was already a hashtag with that. If you told people your hashtag when they registered, and you've got hundreds or thousands of people registering for your event, you can tell them, as part of your registration process, hey, please tweet this or please share on social media and let people know about this event, Okay, so that would be a good way to do it, is if it's about a specific event and you've already got a group of people that you can influence. So back to Charlotte's question about people that have liked her page not necessarily wanting to be not necessarily wanting to adopt the actions that she's asking them to take. I can kind of see that in a way with Prairie Winds Nature Farm. It looks like, it's kids, it's, I mean, even though they're learning about sustainability, if they're thinking of you mainly as a camp, they might not really be, they might be thinking of it more like, hey, this is a really excellent experience for my child. They may not be all that politically minded, So I think just knowing that you have to take a subset of that group and know that there may be some people willing to go with you on this political journey, they're just not all going to. And that's okay. I would say make your business your business. If it can help you with political with your political agenda, then that's great, but I wouldn't cannibalize your business either or alienate people that are already paying you good money to send their kids to camp if they don't share the same political values, let's put it that way. But there are plenty of places where you can do that, and you've mentioned that you're in some groups already, like Greening the Bend, Green Drinks, and groups you can message people with one click. Facebook pages, you can't. So I'm going to go to Greening the Bend. Okay, I know we've got about 5 more minutes, and you guys are really having some good questions. So whatever we don't get to do today, we'll pick up tomorrow. Roseanne asked if I could follow or just talk about going to a Tweetup, and we can certainly do that. I think they're great. Greening the Bend. Okay, that's what I'm trying to find. Here we go. Okay, I don't know if I have, yeah, I already have liked that one, but I'm not an administrator on this page, okay? So all I can really do is I could comment on the page. Not even every page allows outsiders to comment. Sometimes they have to be moderated. It looks like this one, you're free to do so, but I couldn't necessarily, Facebook is making it harder and harder for page traffic to get seen. They want the advertisers to pay, basically, to reach their fan likes. So this is kind of cool. This is Kobe's daughter right here on this page. Here's Nancy. here's Charlotte, so kind of neat. Got connections here right from this call, so that's cool. So anyhow, what I could do, it's not one click, but I could say, here's a petition. Now, I would also always say consider your audience. You know, I would not put that petition, for instance, on Greening the Bend because it's about South Bend and the tree issue was in Valparaiso. You know, if the legislator sees a lot of you know, signatures coming from outside of their district, then I think they're going to take your influence is perhaps a little bit more watered down. They're not going to worry about upsetting people that aren't in their jurisdiction as much as, you know, their own constituents. So hopefully that makes sense. But just from a technical standpoint, if I wanted to do that, I could just, you know, paste my link. And here's another little tip for you. When you paste your link on Facebook, you no longer have to have the link showing. You can just simply delete that. Facebook actually prefers it because it creates what's known as a native link. There's no bait and switch. You can't just have, you know, a bit.ly and then it goes to something else. The picture is what it is. It's already kind of hard linked into your message, and then you could say, you know, hey, South Bend folks, I could use some help, you know, with getting the word out. Let's pretend this is a CAFO petition about getting the word out, da-da-da. You know, so type the rest of message. You know, sharing, much appreciated. Now, I'm not going to do this, obviously, again, because it's not about South Bend, and this petition is, you know, done. So what I'm going to do, okay, here we go. I'm going to X that out, and that, sorry about if I yelled into your ears. I thought I hit send. All right, so I know we've only got about a minute or two left. So let me just see what I've got here left, and I think we're going to have to table these until tomorrow. So Roseanne says that she'd like to see the contacts that she's made via ACS. I think that's American Cancer Society, is that right? Cross over into environmental issues. It's all connected, health, nutrition, environment. Okay, so I'd say email. I want to talk to you more about email, how we really work that. And then also, Charlotte, your question about tribe. I'm going to introduce you to a tool tomorrow that lets you message a lot of different people from one platform pretty darn easily. So we're going to talk about that too. And I think otherwise we've done a fairly good job. Okay, Charlotte says you can't see Roseanne's question. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but okay. We're just about out of time. Thanks, everybody, and I hope this was helpful for you. If you know, you have feedback for me, if there's, you know, something you want to cover that you were a little shy about or that you think of later, you can message me via email, or you can you know, just tell me tomorrow. We're going to be kind of building this as we go. I've definitely got an agenda I'd like to cover, which involves, you know, tribe building, which involves petitioning. We kind of covered that today, but we can actually do a live demo if somebody's got something they need to do. More about Twitter, more about Facebook, and more just about everything you need to know. Crowdfunding too, how to crowdfund your project is kind of a big deal. So we'll be back tomorrow bright and early. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Really, really appreciate the support. Have a great day.